Well, hello everybody. I'm just sitting here waiting for 8 o'clock, looking at my Kansas City Chiefs mini helmet here with Lynn Dawson's autograph on it, and he passed away today. Old Lenny the Cool, Kansas City Chiefs quarterback back when I was a little kid. Rest in peace, Lenny. He'll be missed. Anyway, this is the Bryan Christian Church Wednesday night Bible study. It's 8 o'clock, so let's get going. We've been talking about Joshua, 21 types of Jesus Christ. Joshua is certainly one of those. So turn to Joshua chapter 7. And I know last week, it's been 3 weeks since I've done this. Took a little vacation. Thanks for letting me go. And kind of missed you guys, but it's good to be back. I'm ready to go here. Hopefully I remember what to do. We talked about the Jericho March. I know you probably heard from your Sunday school teacher when you were 5 years old all about the Jericho walls falling down, but hopefully I added a little bit of something to what your Sunday school teacher must have left out, maybe. Anyway, what we talked about has they marched around every day, once a day for 6 days. Then on the seventh day, they marched around 7 times for a total of 13. We talked about how they walked that whole time, and it's a reminder for us to walk in the Lord. They also had played a trumpet. And we talked many verses about how we are to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ like tooting a trumpet. So there's a picture there. And they shouted on the last day, and then the walls fell. And shouting, of course, is telling somebody they need Christ, telling them they need to confess their sins and ask for forgiveness and things like that. We shout those things out. A lot of preachers get loud when they preach, and it probably comes from something like this. And the walls fell, except for one sliver of the wall. That's where Rahab was, because Rahab was a harlot. A harlot back in those days was kind of bottom of the career status totem pole, so to speak. But she did a favor for God's people, so God did her a favor, and he saved her from dying and getting slaughtered by the walls coming down. And wouldn't you know it, she did such a great job helping God out and his people, because they were spies, and she let the spies escape. She became, believe it or not, the great times, 20 generations, maybe something like that, grandmother to Jesus Christ. Yes, Jesus Christ has a harlot in his genealogy, but she asked for forgiveness. She became a converted Jew and lived happily ever after. In fact, she's the mother of Boaz. Now, that's a big deal because that's the book of Ruth. Now, all that was last week, but I ended my Jericho wall falling down with a prophecy given to us by Joshua, and that is that the man will be cursed who tries to rebuild this city back up. He'll try to build it back up by sacrificing to the gods, false gods, Molech probably, the false gods, his firstborn to lay the foundation of the city. Then he'll sacrifice his youngest son to hang the gates. And that was fulfilled. It did happen back there in 1 Kings 16, 30 through 34. Now, I don't know. I think that what I gave you about this stuff, I think it was really necessary, because everything that goes on in the Bible, to something like I'm about ready to share with you, Satan has shown a pattern doing these things, and then the last pattern that is going to be happening is going to be these things I'm telling you about real quickly here. And I mentioned them last week. I want to go over them again because I think it's really important, because things are happening right now. This guy wanted to impress somebody. He wanted to rebuild Jericho, and he had a build back better program, so to speak. But he lived in the same time that the evilest woman and the evilest man that ever lived. And I'm sure they persuaded him to try to build this city back up. And her name was Jezebel. Now, Jezebel, we talked about this last week. Jezebel shows up again in the end times. Not herself, but what she taught the people, her teachings, her beliefs, or whatever, her religion. Revelation 2:20, which is a prophetic book. It hasn't happened yet, but it's going to. It says this: because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which called herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed unto idols. Now, if you remember last week, if you didn't catch last week, man, I highly recommend go back there and take a look at that. Some pretty good stuff. It's 1 Kings 16, 30 through 34. You got verse 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. I sucked that thing dry with all the information I could out of that thing. And you have to know a little bit about the Zidonians, because that's where Jezebel came from, to understand what's going on there. But what is this all about? She's an evil woman. What went on in that time frame that Jericho was cursed by this man because he was trying to build that city back up? Well, the things that were going on back in those days, the Zidonians had sex practices in their religion. Okay, so what do we got today? I think we have all kinds of sexual things going on today, and it's causing havoc. It's a hot button world news. It's just every day you see something about the LGBT and so on. And then also back in that time frame, 1 Kings 16, they were worshiping the groves, which means they were worshiping trees. They were worshiping the idols in the groves. So today, what do we got? We got climate change. We got ESGs. You know what that is, folks? Pay attention to this. ESGs, that's environmental social governance. One of these days, the government's going to come out there and they're going to grade your life by what you do and how you save Mother Earth. Now, they were doing it back then, so Satan is constantly keeping this up. Because God says there's going to be a time where they worship the creature more than the creator. And that's the time frame I think we're living in right now. And what's the ESG? Well, it's, like I said, environmental social governances. One of these days, you're going to go outside and start to mow your yard with a gas lawnmower. And the old green cops are going to come by and give you a ticket or a warning telling you to go out and buy your electric lawnmower. And it just goes on and on and on. You say, oh, that'll never happen in America. Let me tell you something. It's happening in France right now. They're using this program to try to stop anybody and everybody from doing anything that doesn't help solve the green environmental problems that we have. We got some, but man, it's just to do all that would just stop the earth. Let me tell you something. France is doing it right now. The president of France, get this, you can't make this stuff up. The president of France, who decided to go with this green program, ESGs, his name is Emmanuel, which means God with us, Macron, which means the mark. What does Satan want to do? What's the Antichrist want to do? He thinks he's God. Emmanuel, God with us. Macron means mark. What's the Antichrist going to do? He's going to mark people. Do I think Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, is the Antichrist? No, I'm not saying that, but he could be. Just keep your eyes on him, okay? Somebody to watch. He is in the revived Roman Empire, which is a must. So France is in that empire. Now, what else was going on? And it's going on today. You got child sacrifices. This guy killed his firstborn son to lay the foundation of the city. He killed his youngest son to hang the gates. So he had a problem there. He sacrifices kids to get success, to make Jezebel happy. I bet you that's what he was doing it for. Well, child sacrifice today, well, we do the same thing. It's called abortion. We also abuse children through sexual practices. We have pedophiles and so on. That's going on back then. It always has. It's going on today. Just, all the people over there in D.C. and Hollywood probably just, if they heard me say that, they'd probably, hey, where's the kids at? Because it's in high demand right now. It's a sin that's going on like crazy. Then foreigners. In that verse over there in 1 Kings 16, she was from Zidonian. She brought in Zidonian sexual practices, Zidonian worship practices. They worshiped idols, idols, and all kinds. So she was bringing in her foreign policies, her foreign beliefs into a land where she was not supposed to. What do we have problems with today? All those things. They are all hot buttons on the world news in great, gigantic world outbreak. We have sexual practices that have never gone on since the Babylonian days, and we have them today. And we have people worshiping the earth instead of worshiping God. We have people that are worshiping idols. The Antichrist wants you to worship him, the image of the beast. It talks about that over many times in Revelation. Child sacrifices, we have abortion, we have child abuse, we have all kinds of sexual things that we do to kids that isn't right. And we have foreigners. We're letting people in through the walls down there in Mexico. We're letting foreigners in unchecked, whatever, and they're bringing in all kinds of drugs and human trafficking and so on. So, I'm not saying anything other than whatever your opinion is, whatever your opinion is about all the sexual things that are going on today, all the LGBT that's going on, it's huge, it's everywhere. You can't open up the internet or the newspapers without reading something about it. It doesn't matter what you think about the climate change. It doesn't matter what you think about abortion and all the sexual things that are going on with kids these days, all those, and the foreigners, the wall that needs to be built. What you got to admit, no matter where you stand on any of those issues, what you have to admit is those things are huge news items today, okay? And Jesus says all those things will be in abundance by the time I come back at the second coming. They'll all be signs that I'm coming back. If you missed last week, or last time, not last week, but the last time I was on Wednesday night, I want you to go back and take a look at that. And I laid it out, I thought, pretty good about what's going on today. Christ says, when you see these things, I'm about ready to come back. Doesn't matter what you think about them, right or wrong. Some of them are wrong, okay, most of them are. But there are signs that Christ is coming back. Now, let's get back to Joshua. Here's the new material. Joshua chapter 7. The walls fell down. But, look at chapter 7, verse 1. But the children of Israel committed a trespass in the accursed thing, for Achan, the son of Camri, the son of Zebdi, the son of Zerah, the tribe of Judah, took the cursed thing, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against the children of Israel. What's going on here? Well, Achan, first of all, Achan, the man Achan, he's the one that took the accursed thing. He's got Israel in trouble right now. His name Achan means troubler. He is troublesome. He's the troubler. So why is he in trouble? He took the accursed thing. We found out last time there in chapter 6:18, God says, be wise, keep yourselves from the accursed things. Well, what is it? Lest yourselves be accursed. You take the accursed thing and make the camp of Israel accursed and trouble it. And Achan means trouble. But all the silver and the gold and the vessels of brass and iron are consecrated unto the Lord. They're going to go into the treasury of the Lord's house. Don't take anything. When the walls fall down, you're going to look around and you're going to ransack that place and you're going to see gold and silver and idols and all kinds of stuff. That belongs to me. Do not keep it for yourself. Well, Achan decided to go ahead and keep something for himself. Here's some clues here I think are kind of noteworthy. He comes from a long line there from the tribe of Judah. Judah, which we always think of Judah as being a good tribe. Well, Judah back there in Genesis, and I went over this one time before, but I'm going to kind of quickly give you the nutshell here. But Judah was one of the sons of the 12 sons of the tribe of Judah. And he messed up, boy, back there in Genesis 38. And he lost his wife and he lost his two sons because they misbehaved and God just took them out. And he got lonely and he went after what he thought was a harlot, but it was actually his daughter-in-law. She put so much makeup on. She made herself look like a harlot. He asked her how much and she told him how much and blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, she got pregnant and she gave birth to Zerah, which is Achan, with his Achan's great-great-grandfather. Okay, so let me tell you something, man. Sin doesn't just affect you and a couple of people around you. It can go right on down the line several years later and affect other people down the road. So you got to be careful what you do. Sin snowballs, okay? And since we're dragging the tribe of Judah in this thing, in this sinful act here, Jesus was from this very same tribe of Judah. He's a lion from the tribe of Judah. That's what the Bible says. And it reminds us of what was said over there in Galatians 3:13. It says, Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law. Achan is a curse. He's brought Israel a curse. Jesus reminds us, redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. Jesus was made a curse for us, so we wouldn't have to be a curse. Praise God. For it is written, curses everyone that hangeth on a tree, and he hung on a cross. So this Achan here from the tribe of Judah, he is bringing a curse on Israel. Now, look at verse 2. And Joshua sent men from, now nobody knows it yet, okay? They don't know they're cursed yet. He has hidden these gold coins or statues or whatever in his tent. And so Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is the city they're going to go fight against. They just knocked down Jericho. Now the next city they got to do is Ai. Now Ai is between Bethaven on the east side of Bethel. Now I just happened to look those towns up. Ai means heap or ruin. Bethaven means house of vanity, emptiness, waste. And Bethel means house of God. House of God. Now, there's a great story in there. Ai, heap of ruins. Okay, that's what they got to knock down next. It sounds like it already is, but that's the name of the town. But you know what? You always have these choices in your mind. You can, whenever you get up in the morning, whatever you do, choices come to you. You can either head toward the house of ruin, the house of vanity, Bethaven, or you can head toward the house of God. Every step you take, you're going one way or the other. Every decision you make is one or the other, which way you're heading. So you need to make wise choices here. So he sent them out to go spy. And they came back and said, you know what, Joshua, man, these guys are easy. There's hardly, we don't need to take very many men. 2,000, 3,000 ought to get the job done. But they did that, and the Ai came running after them, and Israel fled, and they killed 36 men of Israel, and their hearts melted and so on. So what's going on here? How did they knock down a great big city called Jericho, and then they couldn't even win a little tiny battle against Ai? 4 reasons. 4 reasons. Let me tell you what they are. Okay? No instructions. They spied out the city and they just said, yeah, we can take these guys. They didn't ask God. They didn't pray to God. They didn't go to prayer and God asked God, what should they do? God could have told them. So, but they didn't. Now, another thing, they didn't take their leader with them. Joshua's their leader. You always take the leader with you. They didn't even take Joshua with them. Excuse me for my hand being in the way. They didn't take Joshua with them. Next of all, everything they've ever won, every victory they've ever had was because they took the ark with them. They didn't take the ark with them. Ark is a picture of Jesus Christ. Last thing, of course, is there's a sin in the city. There's sin in the tribe there. Achan took the accursed thing. So what do you got? You got no instruction from God. No, you didn't pray. You didn't follow your leader. You didn't have your leader go in front of you, Joshua and the ark, and you're in disobedience. You have sin in your life. All those things add up to you lose the war, and they did. They had a spirit of self-confidence, losing sight that it's Jesus, or Joshua here in our story, it's Jesus who fights our battles, not our courage, not our valor, not our intellect, not our great battle strategies. We need to have all those, but you need to have them through Christ. Go to him first. All those things are necessary through Jesus Christ. So Joshua and the elders of Israel, they cry to God, why, God, why? What happened? What's wrong? And so verse 11, chapter 7, verse 11, God says, well, here's why. I'll tell you why. Quit crying. Get up. Quit crying, says verse 10. Look at verse 11. Israel has sinned, says God. Israel has sinned, and they have also trespassed my covenant, which I commanded them. For they have taken of the cursed thing and have also stolen and disassembled, which means to use deceit, deny, falsely, lie, anything that's untrue. And they have put it among their own stuff. They have put it among their own stuff. Now, that's what I see there is they have broken 4 out of the 10 commandments. That's pretty bad. God doesn't like that. Why 4? Were they, okay, they stole something. They lied. They coveted it. Okay, you can't do that. And anything that is more important than you obeying God becomes your God. So now they have something above God. So that's 4 out of 10. You might be able to figure out more. But Joshua interrogates the people here. You can go through the rest of the verses there and see it for yourself. But he interrogates until he discovers by elimination who was the guilty one. And before we figure it out, it's Achan. We know who it is, but he doesn't know who it is until right now. But let's analyze what's going on here. What's going on in a sinner's head? What's going on in my head? What's going on in your head when we sin? Okay? Because it happens to everybody. What's going on in a sinner's head? Look at verse 20 real quick. Achan answered Joshua and said, indeed, I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and thus have I done. Now, here's what he says. When I saw among the spoils a goodly Babylonish garment, nice suit, nice 3-piece suit there, 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold and 50 shekels of weight. Then I coveted them and took them. And behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver is under it. Now, he saw, what's the big thing in the Bible? 3 sins. There's thousands of sins, but they all filter into 3 categories. Lust of the eye, lust of the flesh, and pride of life. All right, lust of the eye. He saw all those wonderful things. Then he said, I coveted them. Now he physically saw them. Now it's mental. I've got to have those things. Then what did he do? He took them. By his own volition, he took those things. He chose to do it himself. He saw, he wanted it, and he took it. Now, what I want to do, what makes a person not confess their sins to get right with God? Let's talk about a few things here. Now let's talk about before the act of sin is acknowledged by others. You did it. You saw it. You did it. You wanted it. You did it. But nobody knows about it yet. So let's talk about what goes on in your mind at that time. First of all, pride. Why pride? Well, first of all, you think, well, I deserve that gold and that silver. I deserve it. Or I'll get by with this. It's no big deal. Or this is some great advantage to me having all this money. Me, self. There it is. Pride. I need this. I deserve this. I should have this thing. Okay, no big deal. Then you have, next comes unbelief. God won't care. God won't catch me. God won't really do anything about it. It's no big deal. Okay? So you got pride and you got unbelief. Those are things given to you by the devil. Those are things not handed to you by God. That's why you got to be born again to get rid of those things. Now let's talk about after a sinful act. When it's known and brought to light and exposed to everybody, the sin, but not who did it yet. Okay? The sin has now been exposed. Now everybody knows what happened. We got to figure out who it is. Now what goes on in your head at that time? Fear. Given to you by Satan. Fear. You wouldn't have fear unless you didn't do sin. Okay? Now you fear, I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get in trouble. They're going to find out it's me, which brings to the next one, shame. What will others think of me that I stole this stuff? What will they think of me? Not realizing that God has already been offended all along from the very start what you've done. But you don't even give that even a slight thought. Only what others think of you. Let me tell you what confession is. Confession acknowledges the testimony of God's all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful attributes. It also, confession acknowledges his holiness, and confession acknowledges his divine justice. He says, if you do this, then I got to do that. And you better believe that he does it, okay? All those things you can find right there in Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve in the garden when she bit the forbidden fruit. The lust of the eye, that fruit was going to look good. The lust of the flesh, that fruit was going to taste good. And the pride of life, that forbidden fruit was going to make you wise like the gods. Okay, same thing here. He saw that stuff. He coveted it. He wanted it. And he went after it and he got it. Okay, now, what happens to him? Okay, well, look at verse 25. They stoned him and they set him on fire. You've got to eliminate sin in your life. Okay, it's usually not going to be that severe. But it was here to show us something that you've got to get. If you want blessings from God, you want to have a good relationship with God, you got to keep sin out of your life. It's tough to do. It's hard to do. We can't do it. That's why we go to confession and prayer. We ask God to forgive us, okay? But you got to eliminate sin from your life. Now, Joshua 8, that didn't really end with it. That chapter didn't end with a good note, but let's look at chapter 8. Joshua chapter 8. Now we get God's plan, okay? God says, okay, you screwed up the first time around. You didn't ask me. You had sin going on there. You didn't take Joshua with you. But here's the plan. Take all the men of war with you, not just 3,000. Take them all. And it winds up being 30,000, 10 times that much. Take them all with you, not just a few. So Joshua comes up with a battle plan that God says, you have the right to do this. You do it, Joshua. So he comes up with a plan. He goes, hey, the first time we went up to them and they chased us out and they killed us this time, we'll come up to them just like the first time. But what we're going to do, I'm going to have a whole bunch of men on the back side of the city, hiding, and we'll come prancing up like we did the first time to the front gate. They'll see us and start chasing us like they did the first time, thinking they're going to win again. But then the guys from the back can come around and we'll just put the whoop on them. Okay? That's the plan. That's the plan. And you know what? It's going to work. It's going to work. They lie in wait. It all works. It works very well. Now, look at verse 6, though. I do want to bring this up, because I think it's very important. I hope you realize, okay, that all these battles that I've been going over, no matter what battle it is, they're all showing you basically a dress rehearsal of the big battle coming up called Armageddon, or some other battle that's going to happen prior to Jesus coming back. These are all just showing you pictures. They really happened. Don't get me wrong. These are real people, real events, really happened. But God recorded them to show you something that's going to be even bigger, worldwide scale at the end of time, right before Jesus Christ comes back. So look at verse 6 here. It says that they were drawn. when they snuck up to the gate with just a few men, they were drawing these men out. Now, why I brought that up? Because in Ezekiel 38, I've taught this before. I'm going to do it again. I think it's very important. But in Ezekiel 38, there's a story there, a prophecy talking about how God is going to put hooks in the jaws of Israel's enemies to bring them back to fight Israel. God puts that hook in there. He makes them come after Israel. He wants them to, because Israel's going to win the war. Now, what am I talking about? Ezekiel 38. You don't have time to go there? That's fine. Let me just kind of listen up here. It says, the Son of God, Son of Man, set thy face against Gog. Gog means top. Against Magog, that means the head, up on top, the head. The chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, the prophecy against him. So he said, hey, Ezekiel, you're the man of God. Listen up. Okay, what's top of Israel? What's on the head of Israel? Well, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's Israel. It's Russia. Well, Russia is north, but why would you say that? Because it says the chief prince of Meshech. Chief in the Hebrew language is Rosh. Rosh is the first name that Russia ever had. Russia is what the name now, but back in biblical times it was Rosh. Meshech is Moscow. Tubal, the chief prince, the Russian prince of Moscow, and Tubal, that's Tubalesque, which is the capital of Siberia, which is also Russia. The chief prince of Moscow and Tubalesque. Now, if that prophecy, we don't know, okay, but if that prophecy is for today, which I think it is, the chief prince of Russia would be Putin. All right, Putin, Putin. So, Vladimir Putin. Let's go on. What's going to happen? He said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put hooks in that country's jaw and bring them back to Israel to fight. And they're going to make a league with all these countries down there. And all these countries are here today. You got Iran, Iraq, and Germany, and Turkey. And they're all different names here in the Bible, but you look them up, what they were back then and what they are now, they're all the same ones that Russia's kind of making a league with, and they will make a league with, to go against everybody in the world, especially Israel. So this is quite the prophecy. Now, years ago, 20, 30 years ago, I used to teach my people at my church that I thought that the hook in the jaw was going to be the potash that Israel has at the Dead Sea. They got enough potash, which is an ingredient for fertilizer, which, by the way, we are in shortage of now today. But the potash is a very important ingredient that goes into fertilizer. And they say there's enough potash in the Dead Sea to fertilize the entire world for the next 50 to 100 years. That'd be a nice little commodity to have. And why wouldn't Russia think they can go down there and get that? Just little old Israel, who cares? Now, today, what I'm teaching my people, that's still important. Fertilizer is still important. But Israel, I think in the year 2021 or 2022, which is today, okay, Israel just drilled some gas on the shore of Israel, and I read an article. It was about 900 trillion cubic square yards of natural gas at the shores of Israel. You don't think that's, worth some money? You think maybe Russia wouldn't mind having a little piece of that, or all of it? All you got to do is kill them all and you can have it. Why wouldn't Russia think that they couldn't handle that? I bet you they think they do. I brought all that up just because it's today, man. You need to know it's dress rehearsal for something. This thing here is dress rehearsal for something that's coming up in the future. Something huge, much more bigger event. Now look at verse 9. Here's another thing. A couple things in here I want to bring up. Joshua abode between Bethel and Ai. What did I say? Bethel means house of God. Ai means heap of ruin. That's where we're at. We're always camping in between those two choices in our life. Every step you take and every choice you make is always going to be getting you closer to the house of God or getting your life into a heap of ruins, okay? Making a mistake and making a bad choice. Sin, taking the accursed thing, okay, whatever. So make sure you get up in the morning, you start walking toward the house of God. Heaven is what I'm trying to talk about. Make your good choices. And here it says that Joshua lodged that night amongst the people. Now he's hanging out with the people. You know what that's a picture of? I think that's a picture of Jesus Christ. He spent the night with his disciples before his big event. This is a big event. Jesus spent the night with his disciples before his big event called the Last Supper. And the next day, what? He hung on the cross. That's a pretty big event, okay? Pretty big event. And I see over there in Revelation 19 where Jesus hangs out with the church, his people, right before he comes back at the second coming. So I see a little picture there. Remember, Joshua is, a type of Jesus Christ. I'm trying to show you some things here that Joshua, how he represents Christ. Look at verse 13. Now he says that Joshua went that night into the midst of the valley. Now he goes down from where he was at. He was lodged between Bethel and Ai. Now he's down in the valley. Come on, folks. Song of Solomon 2, verse 1. I am the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys. He's talking about Jesus Christ. Valleys are tough times in your life. This is a tough time. They lost the war. They got to win this one. So Jesus Christ is always the lily in your valley, man. When you're low, feeling depressed, down and out, been defeated, there's a lily there waiting for you in the valley, and his name's Jesus Christ. Now the plan works, man. It works perfectly. The people were drawn out. The people came from behind the city, destroyed everybody. And what I want to talk about is that you got to think hard on this one. Joshua pretended, he fled from his enemy, okay, to make them think that he was defeated again. In the eyes of his enemy, he fled again, just like the eyes of Jesus' enemy. When Jesus gave up the ghost on the cross, it seemed as though that he had lost everything. He lost all, Satan won. The enemies of Jesus Christ are all happy now until Jesus did what? On the third day, he rose again and conquered death, but they didn't know that he was going to do that, okay? Now look at verse 18. The Lord said, Joshua, stretch out thy spear that is in thy hand toward Ai, and I will give it to thy hand. He assures him that he's going to win this battle, and he did. So Jesus Christ assures us that all that go against him he will make them their footstool. Make them their footstool. Where did I get that at? Acts 2:38. You go against Jesus Christ, he'll make you a footstool. He'll put his feet on you. That's said over there in Acts 2:34. The Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou on my right hand until I make thy foes thy footstool. Therefore let all the house of Israel know assuredly, I guarantee it, says God, that God hath made that same Jesus whom thou crucified, both Lord and Christ. It looked like he had lost everything. It looked like it, but then he rose again on the third day. The story hints of the prophecy found there in Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15. I will put enmity between thee and the woman. That would be the serpent, Satan. Satan has a seed. Eve has a seed, an egg, an ova, okay? A seed. And between thy seed and her seed. So forever there's going to be a battle between Satan's seed and mankind and woman's seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. The seed of the woman is going to bruise the head of Satan. All Satan's going to do is bruise the heel of the Messiah, the soon-coming Messiah. So let's wrap this thing up here. Joshua conquered by yielding as though he himself had been conquered. Just like the Lord Jesus Christ, when he bowed his head and gave up the spirit, as though he died and death triumphed over him, and all his interests had been routed and ruined, but in his resurrection, he rallied back and gave all the evil principalities and the powers and the spiritual wickedness in high places and rulers of darkness and death a total defeat on the third day. Okay, he broke the spirit's head, so to speak. Okay, allowing the serpent to bruise his heel. Jesus let himself be brutally hung on that cross, only to rise again to conquer all the horrible, evil things that are in this world. Now, that kind of looks like how this battle was won out. Now, you got here, look just quickly here in verse 19, it says they set the city on fire. In verse 20, it says that the Ai, the men looked behind them, and they saw that the city, the smoke had sent up to heaven, and they had no power to flee this way or that way. You know, the Bible says many times, don't look at your past. Don't look behind you, you know. Always press toward the mark. These guys looked behind and saw their city was on fire, and they lost the war. They couldn't flee anywhere. They took the time to look behind them. You can't think about your past. Always think about the present and where you're going with Jesus Christ in your future. Always think about that. Now, let's look at chapter 9. Chapter 9. Now, big war was won there, and everybody's heard about it. A bunch of kings, about I think 5 of them there, have all the way around there have heard about this, and they want to take on Joshua and get this guy out of the way. But what happens is the Gibeonites came in, and they acted wily. They came in to camp of the Jews, all with old clothes and no water and moldy bread. Shoes were all ripped up, and they said, "Oh, we're from a far country. We heard what you did to Pharaoh at the Red Sea." Well, that was 40 years ago. "We heard what you did to the king of Og." Well, that was a few years ago. They did not mention the Jericho walls. They did not mention the Battle of Ai, because that would have been, news doesn't travel that fast. Man, they're really playing the part. What am I trying to get at? They wanted to make a league with Joshua. And Joshua, again, Joshua did not go to the Lord to see if this is what he should do. He just said, "Oh, you come from a far country." You know what they did? Some language they used. They go, "Joshua, we came all this way to meet you." Joshua, we heard all about you. Well, Joshua's probably flattered by that. Well, why wouldn't you want to meet me? Then they said, "We're your servants. We're thy servants." So they put themselves in an inferior, subordinate position. Who wouldn't want that? Then they said, "Oh, we heard about your God and all the wonderful things." Again, flattery. Joshua so he makes a league with them. Not supposed to. In fact, Deuteronomy 7 and Deuteronomy 20 both tell us by Moses, it's the law, don't make a league with Gentile nations. But here Joshua just went ahead and did it. Flattery. I think flattery did him in. And deception. Again, what's going on here is going to happen again. Deception. What did the Jews ask Jesus? What's the sign of your... Here it is, Matthew 24:3. "And he, Jesus, sat upon them on the Mount of Olives." That's where he gives his Olivet discourse. "The disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, Jesus, what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world," or the age. Okay, and Jesus answered and said unto him, "Take heed that no man deceive you." Joshua just got deceived. Israel just got deceived. What's going on today? Deception. You can't, I don't know if we can actually read the news and not be lied to. Lies, more lies, deception. That is just the outrage. It's happening. We're living in that time where everybody's lying. Okay? Then, look what happens here. Look at verse 16. Now they find out. Okay, they deceived them, but look what happens. "And it came to pass at the end of 3 days, after they had made a league with them, that they heard that they were from their neighbors." Oh, you guys lied to it. They found out what the truth was on the 3rd day. Truth always happens on the 3rd day, doesn't it? Jesus Christ rose from the dead on the 3rd day. Christ is coming back at the second coming at the 3rd day. And so we've gone over that so many times, I don't want to do it again. But the 3rd day is very, very important there. Now, Joshua 10, we're going to wrap this thing up. Joshua 10. Now, these kings are now furious. They're not so mad at Israel anymore as they are at the Gibeonites, because the Gibeonites made a league with Israel, their enemy. So now the Gibeonites want to kill, now these 5 kings that surround this, Jericho and that land there. Now they want to kill the Gibeonites for making a league with Israel. The Gibeonites come running to Israel and said, "Hey, slack not thy hand," verse 6, chapter 10, verse 6. "We're your servants. Help us out. We made a league with you. Now you got to help us out." Joshua goes, "God, should I?" God says, "Yeah, go right ahead and do it. In fact, I assure you, not a man will die on this thing. You made a league with them. You weren't supposed to, but your word is gold. So even though you weren't supposed to, you got to do it because you did it." So God says, "I'm in on it too." And look at remember, dress rehearsal, right? These battles are nothing more than showing you bits and pieces of the Battle of Armageddon. Because look there in verse 11. It says that God sent them hailstones, and the hailstones killed more of the enemy than the Jews did with the sword. Hailstones, those things are coming back. Those things happened during Moses' time against Egypt of the 10 plagues, but that was even a dress rehearsal of what's coming up next. Coming up very shortly in the tribulation to get rid of all God's enemies. Listen to Revelation 8:7. Before I tell you that, the reason why I'm bringing this up, because verse 12 here, "Then spake Joshua," after the hailstones, verse 12, from verse 11 says, "Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day The day. What's the day? The day is then and the Armageddon. The day is the second coming. That day, the day. Those two phrases always mean right now, whatever you're reading, and it's a dress rehearsal for the end times, the second coming of Jesus Christ, probably, most likely, Armageddon. Now, so that's what it is here. So let's look at this thing here. In the last days, in Revelation 8:7, it says, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. Man, that's quite a hailstone. It's on fire, and it's got blood in it. Might be the hail there, it might be meteorites, a little dust, I don't know. Let's just say it's hail, because that's what the Bible says. And they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees were burned up, and all the grass was burned up. God says, you're going to worship trees? Remember that? We talked about that at the very beginning of this little conversation we're having here. Okay, God burns the trees and the grass up with this hail because they're worshiping trees. They're worshiping Mother Nature instead of God. And God's not happy about that. Revelation 16:21. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, because God's doing it. Every stone about the weight of a talent. How much does a talent weigh, Brian? About 90 to 110 pounds. That's a big hailstone. Okay? You're not going to get under a tree and not get hit by this hailstone. Okay? You're not going to cover yourself. You're not even going to get in your house. The basement's not good enough. These hailstones that are going to wipe out the enemies of God are 90 to 110 pounds. Okay? And it says here, and men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, for the plague thereof was exceedingly great. Yeah, I would think so. 90 to 110 pound hailstones. Pretty big. Now, look at this thing here in verse 12. On that day, the day of the Lord, which is a picture of the second coming, delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. Okay, and the sun stood still and the moon stayed. Miracles with the sun and the moon happened then, and it's going to happen again. Now look what happens. It says the sun stood still and the moon stayed still until verse 13, 10:13, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? That is not a book of the Bible. That's a book outside the book of the Bible, but it contains the book of the Bible. So it's a pretty decent book, but it's not a book of the Bible. But it's written in the book of Asher. So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hasted not to go down about a whole day. The sun and the moon stood still so Joshua can defeat all these enemies that are going against God and Israel for about a day. Now I'm emphasizing that for a reason. Now in the end times, remember this is a dress rehearsal. In the end times, Revelation 6:12 says this, and I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there were a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth. Now it didn't stand still, but it did a miracle. As hair, and the moon became as blood. Revelation 8:12 says, and the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was smitten, and a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars, so the third part of them were darkened, and the day shone not as a third part of it, and the night likewise. So, if you go back to Revelation, there's 21 horrible catastrophe things that are going to kill a lot of people. And one of them is the sun's going to do something, the moon's going to do something, and there's going to be a hailstorm, and there's all kinds of other stuff, okay? But those are the three things. Same thing is happening here. Now, remember, it stopped. The sun stood still for about a day. Wow, about a day. Well, what's about a day? 23 hours and 20 minutes, all right? Why do I think that? If you go to 2 Kings chapter 20, we have another miracle that God does. Hezekiah is a good king, man. He's a great king, good guy. Made a big mistake toward the end of his life, but until then he was doing a good job. And he's dying. And Isaiah the prophet says, hey, Ezekiel, you better count your number, better count your days. You're on your way out. And Ezekiel starts crying, and he begs God to spare his life and to give him some more years. And God says, all right, Ezekiel, I hear you. I'll give you 15 more years. On the third day, you're going to be done. On the third day, okay? On the third day, your sickness that you have will be gone from you. Hezekiah's like, wow, I got to wait 3 days. Hey, God, prove to me. He asked Isaiah, he goes, Isaiah, can you ask God to prove to me that he's going to do what he's going to do on the third day? That's something you wouldn't want to do, but God says, all right, I'll show you. Isaiah goes, what do you think, Hezekiah? Is it a big deal that God would send the sundial 10 degrees forward? Or would it be a bigger deal to you that God would send the sundial 10 degrees backward? Hezekiah says, well, I want to live longer, so have the shadow of the sundial go back 10 degrees, and I'll believe that God's going to heal me on the third day. Well, think about this. A sundial is like an arc. It's half a circle. A full circle is 360, so a half a circle is 180. 12 hours in one day. 180 degrees divided by 12 is 15 degrees. Now, I got a little math equation here. 15 degrees divided by 10 degrees, which is what God says. What's the big deal to you? 10 degrees one way or 10 degrees the other way? He chose to go backwards. So 15 degrees divided by 10 degrees is 0.666 infinity degrees. 60 minutes divided by, or 60 minutes times 0.666 is 40 minutes. Remember Joshua? It was about a day that the sun stood still, so Joshua can fight and defeat the enemies. It was 40 minutes. See, that you add the two together, you got yourself a day. Okay? Now, why did I bring that up? Because it's just cool. God does some great things. And even back there in Yale in 1870, some old scientist there in Yale came up with the idea that he did all his calculations, looking at the stars and stuff, and he realized that he thinks there's missing a day in all the time. And of course, everybody patted him on the back, and wow, that's great. And all of a sudden, but he goes, yeah, because that's in the Bible. They go, oh, science in the Bible? No way. He's a crackpot. He wouldn't know what he's talking about. He's one of them old Christians trying to prove that the Bible's right. Whatever, man. It doesn't matter. God did it. God has wiped out a day from all time, so Joshua can fight and Hezekiah can prove that he was going to live longer. Now, last thing I want to bring up, and it's a good one. You go back to Joshua chapter 10. They win that war just exactly as God said they would. They killed all the kings just about. They got a couple left. They kill everybody. They hang him in a tree. Something probably significant about that. Jesus hung in a tree. But look at verse 28. I got to wrap this thing up. Look at verse 28. Look at this thing. And that day, Joshua, and that day, second coming of Jesus Christ, and that day. So it happened then, and it's going to happen again. You bet it is. Listen to this. And that day, Joshua, or you can say, and that day, Jesus, for the second coming. And that day, Joshua took Makkedah and smote him with the edge of the sword, and